Hey y'all, it's the NFT Roundtable, a podcast produced by Black NFT Art. It's Monday, April 5th, 2021, and I am here speaking with Tonya Evans, who is an IP lawyer and an emerging educator and thought leader in the NFT space. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tonya. How are you doing?
Doing really well. Thank you for having me and congratulations on the show. I love it.
Thank you, thank you. How's your day going?
So it's been good. This is one of those Mondays. First of all, in the middle of the pandemic/pandemonium, what day is it? So we just start there. The only day that I do know for sure of every week is going to be Monday.
Mm-hmm.
and really hitting the ground running. And there's so many exciting things going on in the space, but I'm also very mindful of my energy and my ability to show up meaningfully for people. So I was having a conversation with some friends recently, and we were talking about the concept of overflow. And if you think of from the point of view of like the cup runneth over, everything in the cup is for you. For me, I'm speaking of myself, and everything that is an overflow after the cup is full, that's for everybody else. That's my gift back to the world. And so just being mindful of making sure that the cup is full, and then to make sure that there's some type of abundance that's pushing it over the edge, so that I get to use my talents and gifts and skills to meaningfully connect with people and
Mm-hmm.
to leave a little something on this earth while I'm here to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mondays challenges that, because it challenges me. People refer to me, I do not claim this for my life, of overachiever, but high achiever. I know that we're getting to know each other, but I can clearly tell that we are from the same tribe and running the same
Yes,
circles.
yes, for sure.
So there's always something that we want to do, and I can already tell you're intellectually curious, you're in it, you're about the people. But for a moment, Mondays remind me to pause, to meditate, to get clear. And so
Yeah,
as I'm telling that to you, I'm reminding myself in this moment too.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I've had a few people mention that recently.
Mm,
Not necessarily directly to me, but in passing, and um, I'm trying to take it very seriously because I'm a go 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 kind of person,
yes.
and I've been thinking lately like I need to have some clear practices
Mm-hmm.
for like de-stressing, resetting, taking care of myself. Because I am someone who, like, when I'm stressed out
Mm.
or feeling overworked, like I either eat a lot, drink, smoke, or
Cheers.
you know,
Cheers. We got to do it. It's five
yes.
o'clock, so I don't know where you are.
Which is not like, there's nothing wrong with food, there's nothing wrong with alcohol, there's nothing wrong with
Right.
weed, but like you got to do it in a healthy way, and
Yes.
and sometimes I need to just like breathe, sometimes I need to exercise,
Mm-hmm.
stretch. So I'm trying to be more intentional about like taking care of myself in this
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, amazing, and overwhelming NFT space.
Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
but but yeah, so speaking of NFTs, like you're a lawyer. Can you tell us
Mm-hmm.
about your background as a lawyer? Like, what kind of law do you practice? I know you're a professor, so what kind of law do you teach? And also, um, we can segue from there into why you have chosen to focus or to get into the NFT space.
Yes. It, I'll work backward just for a moment. I could
Okay.
not have chosen a better time to do what I do when I look over the arc of my career, to focus really at the intersection of the disciplines that I've spent my entire life focused on: intellectual property, entertainment, innovation, technology. It all came together in this, and creativity. It came together in this wonderful, crazy way that we could not have reasonably anticipated at all. So, as you mentioned, I am an attorney. I graduated from Howard University School of Law HU,
Nice.
for anybody who, big up in the HBCUs in Howard in particular. And I clerked in the Third Circuit. I worked in big law for a few years. That means going to an international firm. I was at Drinker, Biddle and Reith at first, and then Pepper Hamilton. And at the time, I was actually working in the Trust and Estates Department, doing sophisticated planning for high net worth individuals, which really serves me well now as well in the crypto space, separate and apart from the NFT space, or maybe in addition to. And I practiced for 10 years full time, and then transitioned into the legal academy. So I'm in my 14th year of teaching. I started, this 14 years. I'm like doing the math in my head. It's crazy as I say it out loud. I received tenure pretty early on. I left Widener University School of Law and then went to the University of New Hampshire School of Law. I served as the Associate Dean of the law school there and was a tenured professor there as well. I left to come back to Pennsylvania, a little more freedom in being able to certainly continue in law school teaching, but also to really double down on my entrepreneurial endeavors. I'm the CEO of me. I say that all the time and refer to myself in that way because no matter where I am, and if I have the quote unquote day job or W-2 income, then I'm always going to be building something that is for myself, creating generational wealth and really serving my family well. And I teach now, among other things, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and law, information privacy law. I teach administrative law and entertainment law. And that has served me well too. When I was at UNH Law, I created the first and directed the first online blockchain, cryptocurrency, and law online certificate program because I was teaching courses for law students, but there were so many people who I couldn't reach and couldn't serve. And so creating that program, pulling in world-class faculty, building the curriculum, hiring the adjuncts, that taught me a lot about the administrative side of teaching and education. And it was a really important step to bridge the gap really between lawyers and the crypto community. The core crypto community generally wanted to have nothing to do with lawyers. The whole idea from a cypherpunk perspective, is working outside of quote unquote the system. But as a lawyer, I know that this is not operating in a vacuum, and it would be irresponsible of me to participate meaningfully in the ecosystem. And I adore crypto generally, Bitcoin. I'm the chair of the Maker Foundation, part of the Maker DAO community. So I get it. But I also know that this doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so what could I do to bridge the divide between lawyers or the next wave of lawyers as a matter of education and the people who are going to need great lawyering in order to figure out how the law applies. And then finally, I am the owner of the Advantage Evans Academy. I have my own onboarding course called From Cash to Crypto. And I created, we'll talk about it later, but a new program for creatives, as I say, and collectors in the NFT space. So everything creatives and collectors need to know about the law generally, but specifically about intellectual property law, the creation process, what rights they have, what they're creating, what they're passing on. And so that has taken up the rest of my 25 hours in the day to set that up. And I host a weekly podcast. So a little something about that as well.
Yeah. So I am so curious. This is not on our list of questions, but I just thought about this because like crypto is so new and then NFTs are so new. So as a lawyer, right? Like when you're working in other fields like real estate, for example, you have like all this historical, I guess, precedence is the word or something like that you can refer to. You have court cases, et cetera, et cetera. But with something that's brand new, it's like, how do you figure out how the law applies or how things work legally, especially if the US government has not caught up yet in terms of like really clear regulation or rules and things like that.
So by default, we're going to always first look to precedent, even if you have a novel use of technology. In what ways can we look at prior rulings, court rulings? In what way can we look at existing statutes and regulations to say, all right, this is slightly different than the technology that existed when this law came into existence or when this court case was decided, but are we able to still use the framework, at least the framework, if not clearly the substance of an existing law, to apply it to some new technology? Technology has, since the dawn of ages when we had different types of technology, I don't know if we called it tech, but some improvement, some innovation. Innovation always challenges the law because the law is created based upon a certain set of facts and the laws that apply to those particular facts. So to your question, what happens when the facts change? It tests and challenges the notions of the law, and nothing recently has challenged it so much as in the 90s, really, when you're talking about the internet and then digital technology. I think of the late 90s with things like Napster and Grokster, and how you can make a perfect, from a peer-to-peer technology fashion. That was that beginning of disintermediation that we see now in the Web 3.0 world, right? And all of the concerns in the entertainment industry, in the art world, in the music world, like what happens when not only do you use peer-to-peer technology from a crypto perspective to avoid the double spend problem that I can always and only, if I have one Bitcoin, I send it to you, then that means I don't have it anymore. That was the challenge of peer-to-peer technology when combined with digital technology, because you could make this perfect digital copy of a music file. I still had mine and I could send it to 1,400 of my not so closest friends, right? And so in what ways can we now flip the technology, same technology, internet, peer-to-peer technology, and talk about cryptography either later or another time, but that challenges our notions and assumptions about a range of things. That doesn't mean that the law doesn't apply, but sometimes it's ill-fitting. Sometimes you have to throw the whole thing out and start something new. And sometimes you can use existing laws, either they need to be updated or tweaked. I see a lot of that in the securities realm, in commodities. They're working it out on the financial side. It's not exactly accurate to say that there is no regulation, but it's certainly ill-fitting when you think about the decentralized nature of distributed technology, right? Like who do you point to in order to hold accountable for a range of issues? Something that came out recently from the financial task force. I don't have FATF. I don't have the acronym in front of me. They have some really concerning regulations coming down the pike where they're trying to reach beyond the decentralized nature of protocols to actually hold, among others, coders responsible for the consequences of, or the uses, the misuse of code, if they had the intention from the beginning. So it's broad and general and really concerning. I think the way it's written feels like it's unconstitutional. But, I say all that to say there are a range of existing laws that are going to be challenged, but that doesn't mean that existing structures are not going to maybe put old wine into a new wineskin, or old new wine into an old wineskin. I don't know, but you can't fit everything into an existing structure. So time will tell, but it's very complicated right now.
All right, so let's talk about intellectual property and NFTs. Can you define IP and NFT, and how are they related and how are they different? Essentially, like, are NFTs and intellectual property the same thing?
No, is the short answer. And let's unpack it. So I'm going to assume that the audience understands NFTs and you come here to figure out the legalities of it. And so this is probably the number one question that I work through and help creatives and collectors to understand. And we'll start in this way. All intellectual property is property, but not all property is intellectual property. There are two main types of property, and there's certain rights that attach to someone who holds property, like your laptop, or if you own a home or something like that. There are different types of property. You can have personal property and what we call real property or land. And on the personal property side, you have tangible and intangible personal property. So again, your laptop or your phone, that's tangible property. Tangible meaning you can touch it, feel it, see it, hold it. And intangible, and that goes into this subset of personal property, something that you can't touch, but that the law has created in people a certain set of rights for property created with the mind, even if it technically has some tangible manifestation. So let's use an example of a physical painting, right? So if I purchase a physical painting, I have purchased the right to use, to enjoy, to display it, maybe not even publicly display. We'll talk about what copyright is and why that would be, but that physical piece of art is separate and distinct from the intellectual property rights that attached and are held automatically by the creator of that physical art. And the same thing applies to someone creating digital art as well, that anyone creating an original, literary, or artistic work that's fixed in a tangible medium of expression. What does that mean? From the moment I'm not just thinking about a poem of a tree, but I've actually written it, or I've typed it, or I've recorded it, it's capable of being copied. It's sufficiently permanent, and therefore, as long as it's original and I didn't copy it from someone, that copyright attaches, or I own the copyright in that written or typed or recorded piece. And copyright is actually a bundle of rights. So copyright is basically, there's one other that's not really relevant for our conversation, but probably most obvious, the right to copy, or what we call the reproduction right. The right to create derivative works, the right to adapt the original. So what does that mean? I can write a book, and then I can sell those rights to someone to create a screenplay. And the screenplay derived from the original right that was created when I wrote the book, right? So the right to copy, the right to adapt, the right to distribute copies. So if I have the right to copy, I have the right to distribute those copies. Or I can license that very discrete limited right to distribute. And that's when somebody does like a distribution deal or something like that. They've licensed the right to one of the rights within that bundle. And then the final two relevant for our conversation, the right to publicly display the work if it's capable of being displayed, and the right to publicly perform. So if I'm here and I'm singing songs, I don't have to license that right. But if I go on the interweb and I do that, that's a public performance. Or if I go to a public venue, and there are different licenses that I would have to acquire. And so that would be for the platforms, right? So if there's an NFT minting platform, they're going to acquire the right to publicly display, because if you're not publicly displaying it or publicly performing something that has some type of animation or music, then you don't have anything. You can't display it, you can't sell it. So I'll pause there, but that's an overview that what property is. Property, final point to your original question, that property is also a bundle of rights. There are a number of things: the right to use and enjoy, the right to exclude, so to prevent someone from access or either getting access or exploiting it in any way. And by exploit, that's a common term, not a pejorative term. The right to monetize, the right to do a number of things. But you have property, and then you have certain types, and intellectual property is one of those types. And there are a number of different types of IP, but we can talk about that in a moment.
So with the example of a painting, for example, I make a painting, I sell it to someone, and you were saying that through that sale, they now own the painting and the right to display it, use it, but they don't own the intellectual property. what does that mean in that
So
case?
so the copyright is that right to make a copy of it. So I could have the physical painting, but I can't create prints.
I see.
And
Okay.
then if I were to make prints, which I wasn't supposed to do because I'm not the copyright owner, I can't distribute them. I can't say, I have this fantastic Romare Bearden, so now I'm going to make prints of the Romare Bearden and I'm going to sell them. And then I might make an
Gotcha.
NFT. That's very bad. Don't do that. That's
So
bad.
does that also
Right.
mean that you couldn't, for example, display the painting in a movie or a show?
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
I say absolutely. I'm immediately thinking of a bunch of cases where in some sense it depends on the placement of it. Sometimes it gets pretty nuanced. Is it in the foreground, background? But generally speaking, that goes more to the amount of money that one would pay for the ability to have that artwork appear. Sometimes it's so far in the background as to
Hmm.
not be really distinguishable, and then you probably wouldn't have an issue, as opposed to having it in the foreground where it's very clear. And there's a lot of money paid for that type of placement, and that would be a public display of that piece, and so separate rights would attach. If you have music as well, that'd be problematic. You have a synchronization license if you're syncing
Hmm.
music with an audiovisual work, and using it in various ways. So yes, that's a great example to show you the difference. I couldn't make those prints, couldn't publicly display, I couldn't publicly perform without paying. Um,
Hmm. So what
Licensing, so
if,
that's where licensing comes in.
and then what if the original creator of the painting dies, let's say, or they
Mhm.
died 200 years ago, right? What, who, if I wanted to display this painting in a film or something like that, who would I go to get the rights to do that?
It depends, and sometimes it could be really difficult to. The short answer is whoever inherited those rights. So that could be family, that could be a studio, could be a house.
Hmm.
Whoever the copyright owner is, that could be a person, that could be an entity, that could be a group of
Okay.
people. So that's going to depend. And also, it depends. Copyright is really complicated because things that are so old that they have fallen into the public domain, meaning no
Hmm.
one owns it, or stated more precisely, everyone owns it, something that's in the
Hmm.
public domain. And just because something's on the internet does not mean it's in the public domain. It just means it might be publicly accessible. And so there are hard dividing lines between what used to be protected by copyright that is no longer protected by copyright because the term expired.
Hmm.
And that's a complicated calculation. I will say, if we created something today, my copyright would attach for my entire life and then 70 years after my death. So for my whole life, I hope to have a very long life, and then 70 years after my death. Um,
Okay.
and so that gets to be a little more complicated. You said something 200 years ago. 200 years, you're good. Something relatively recent or since like the late 1920s. I don't have that number in front of me, but um, something around that time, I'd be a little more careful. And then the final point, it can be very difficult to identify who the owner is because although copyright exists automatically, you are not required to register your copyright with the Copyright Office. There are
Hmm.
a huge number of benefits to do so. One of the least and one of the most important is that you can't sue someone for infringement until you first register your copyright with the Copyright Office. So we could talk
Hmm.
about some of the benefits, but your SOL, if you're thinking I just automatically have rights and I can sue, you cannot. You cannot file an infringement suit until it's first registered. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, it can be a complicated process to identify the person because there's no registration requirement, which means you're not always going to know who owns it.
Hmm. So, okay, this, I have a million questions, so let me try and stay on track here. So NFTs, right? This
Mm,
is NFT Roundtable. Now that we've laid, I think, a good amount of groundwork, understanding of IP
mhm,
and copyright, and licensing, when it comes to NFTs, like what
mhm.
are the legal issues and like legal concerns that people need to be aware of when they are creating NFTs and also
Mm-hmm.
buying NFTs?
All right. So one thing is to start with the terms of service for every platform. Every platform is different. So we are painting, no pun intended, we're painting with a really broad brush because you're entering into a contract with each platform, and each platform has its own terms and conditions for use. So I would spend some time looking and unpacking those. I've been doing that with my research assistant, and they're all over the board, starting with, like a copyright owner, like the NBA with NBA Top Shot. They have almost an ironclad terms and conditions of use because they want to make it abundantly clear. We are licensing the right for you to collect and display as long as you follow all of these rules. It's like a 12-page terms and conditions sheet. Mm-hmm. And they're super specific about maintaining and reserving rights in their copyrights there that you could lose your interaction with or control over your ownership of one of their packs if you do X, Y, and Z. And then you have the other platforms where folks are really going to mint their own intellectual property. One, you need to ensure that you own or have the right to mint a particular an NFT connected to a particular art file, or however either it's going to be digital or some type of experience, but you have to own the rights.
Own it?
Did you create it? That's first. Did you create it?
Okay.
Or are you licensed to use it? Or here's a third area. Every technical copyright infringement is not actionable, meaning someone could sue you for it and you do not want to be sued, but you actually might be right because there's what we call fair use. Fair use is different from public domain. Public domain means the public owns it. It's not owned by an individual. Fair use means technically there is a copyright owner, but there is a legal permission given because of the way that an artist is using it. So I think most commonly of like a collage or some type of appropriation art, where the whole point of that art form is to take bits and fragments of what already exists to create something new. And it's difficult for artists to put themselves in the position to have to answer this question. If you have any doubts about how you are using something that is already something copyrighted already in existence in your work, here are the factors that a court would use to actually go through. It talks about the nature or purpose of the use, the character of the original work. Is it like highly creative or is it more straightforward? For example, I have a series of legal reference guides for writers and other professionals in the literary law space. There's only so many ways I can talk about copyright. It's not very original. So unless somebody is copying verbatim my words, we're probably capturing the same thing. We're all starting with the Copyright Act and embellishing a bit on our take. But we have to stay close to the Copyright Act, right? As opposed to something that's highly fanciful and creative. And then how much did you use? Was it the whole thing or just a small part? And even if you used a small part, is it what we call in the law the heart of the matter? A good way to explain it is through a music example. You might have 16 bars, right? But did you take the hook that everybody loves and it's really like the heart of the work? Sometimes even appropriating a small amount can have what the fourth factor goes to, a real impact, a negative potential impact on the saleability of that original work. Those are the factors that a court would use. That is what, unfortunately, lay people are required to think through. But the one final point about fair use, artists should focus on whether or not their use, regardless of what the original copyrighted work is, whether the artist's use is transformative, is the language that a court would use to say, okay, we took something that already existed and was protected, but this artist has so transformed it as to create something new. Or maybe they're doing it for comment or criticism, satire, right? Something like that. Those are some of the more protected uses. But as I say all that, you can tell that it's very complicated for an artist to kind of work through that. But those are some of the considerations. And the final point is I'd be really careful with some of these platforms because to me, it feels clear that there weren't any intellectual property attorneys involved in writing because they're kind of loose with language. I was looking at Mintable and it's like, we're really talking about the transfer of copyright without more, what that looks like. First of all, you actually have to have an assignment of a transfer of copyright separate and apart from the digital file or the physical art, as we talked about earlier. An assignment has to be in writing. A license doesn't have to be, but an assignment does. And so getting clear about what the rights are and what the rights are that you are granting to the platform and to any downstream revenue opportunities. Not all platforms do it. To the extent they do, artists have got to pay attention to whether or not their downstream royalty participation is siloed with a particular marketplace, or if that marketplace is using a different, let me get too wonky, but a different standard. I think it's the 2981 standard that makes it easy to, or makes royalty payments portable. Mm-hmm. So you might mint in one place. If you transfer or sell on OpenSea or something like that, are the royalties that you were granted for that on that initial platform, is that portable to another one? Mm-hmm. Or is it siloed in that one place? And so people really, Mintable, to Mintable's credit, does a good job with this. They are using that standard in their token minting process. But if you're going to transfer somewhere else, that marketplace is going to have to support that smart contract standard, or you might be SOL in terms of downstream participation.
When it comes to artists essentially having their rights protected and their artwork protected and their royalties protected and things like that, are there specific platforms that stand out to you in terms of doing a better job of I guess communicating these things or providing this protection than others?
Not so much providing the protection, but writing with clarity about what rights are granted to the platform and what rights are acquired by collectors or investors. And so Foundation sticks out to me. Rarible, in some sense, sticks out to me. Another that I think does a good job. Still working my way through Nifty Gateway. It's a lot going on there, so I have to spend more time with their terms and conditions. I know it's one of the first and one of the most important. But in terms of how the terms and conditions are presented and the clarity of those that information, Foundation, OpenSea to some extent, but Rarible. There's one more that I'm. If I think of it, I will let you know. But those are the ones that definitely stick out, to be sure. And the whole process that they have, both on Foundation side and Rarible, they seem to be impressive. And it seems like a lot of creators have been happy there. I've heard some complaints about Nifty Gateway about whether they're open and as inclusive as they should be. I don't know enough, but I've seen enough people in our community in particular complaining about it that I want to take a closer look.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to let's see, when it comes to NFTs and copyright, I know a question that has been going around is if NFTs replace the need to actually register with the Copyright Office.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There is no replacement. There are a number of, this was a topic that would come up a lot even before non-fungible tokens came into public view, because we know they've been around for a minute, but now they're in public view, so we're really talking about it. And even before this space, there were platforms that suggested that they would replace the Copyright Office and the various copyright offices around the world. So instead of having to worry your pretty little head about registering with a Copyright Office, and it's a very small amount of money to do, and it doesn't take much time. We'll get to that in a minute. Just come here and you'll enter the facts and circumstances of creation, and we will, it will be recorded to a public blockchain that's immutable, and ta-da. But what I said earlier remains true. Until you file with the Copyright Office, you cannot file for infringement. You can have all the evidence that you want in the world, and it would be great evidence of something, the facts and circumstances that existed at a particular time. Wonderful. But unless and until you file with the federal office created in order to administer these rights, you're SOL. Another thing that...
Sorry, would you recommend... Okay, go ahead.
The one final thing about that is that in 2019, the Supreme Court held that you cannot sue until you first register your copyright. So the highest court in the land has already spoken. They spoke 2 years ago about it. You do yourself a tremendous disservice. It reminds me of the analog example back in the 20th century when people would mail themselves their poem or something that says, this will be the evidence I need if someone ever infringes. You can't use it because you can't get into court. So it's the same thing.
So would you recommend that every NFT artist register every piece that they mint with the Copyright Office?
1,000%. One of the, without fail, you are doing yourself an extraordinary disservice, not only to your art, but also to your legacy, if you do not protect these rights. And the reason, there are many, but the technological barriers to replication or someone taking something and creating their own NFT from it and exercising ownership control and monetizing it, it's just so much easier. There were some natural technological barriers to this type of infringement before we have long since left that behind. And so you absolutely have to register with the Copyright Office in order to protect your work. I mentioned earlier that there are a number of benefits to registration, even though it's not required. One of them is you have 3 months from the time that you have publicly displayed or from the moment that you have published your work. And so from the date that you do that, you have 3 months to secure some really valuable rights. One, statutory damages. The other, attorney's fees. That means that it's really difficult sometimes to establish the monetary damages that a copyright owner suffers when somebody infringes on their work. I mentioned before we started recording that I was a performance poet, and I have a CD and some books out and things like that. My biggest fan could go all around the country publicly performing my work, not charging a dime. And so if they don't have any profits, and it's expensive to sue someone, then but for statutory damages, that basically means that Congress took the time to write out, if there is an infringement, then you receive this amount of money. It goes in most cases from $750 per infringement to $30,000 per infringement, up to $150,000 in the most egregious, like you should be ashamed of yourself, and then down to technical infringements, but there was a good faith effort, but they just got it wrong, down to $250,000. That's a wide range that you don't have to prove that money, but you get that money by one, registering, and two, registering within the relevant time period to preserve your rights. You can always sue, but you cannot always rely on statutory damages. You have 3 months from the date of publication. You must, even if you don't do it before, as a part of your minting protocol and your IP strategy, you must include registering the copyright.
And then you said that process is pretty simple. How much does it cost?
I think it's $55 now. They did some adjustments recently. But if you go to copyright.gov, you could see that it used to be $35. I believe it's at least $55. It might be $75, but that is, I assure you, the least expensive insurance policy you will ever buy. And, when I think of a false economy, like, I'm going to save this $75. For what? For what? I had $75 worth of wine last week. I kid you not. Right? So the amount of money, think of the money that we're investing for creators and the minting fees, the the gas. Right? So if you're going to manage your gas, then you need to also set aside an amount of money or build that into the sale. Right, to make sure that you're going to win on the upside. The consequences of not doing this, it's not a thing until it's a thing, right?
Right. So basically, every artist needs to just assume or plan ahead that every time they mint, they're going to have to spend $50 registering with the Copyright Office. And it can be done fully online.
That's correct. They have what's called the Electronic Copyright Office. It's called ECO, and you can access that at copyright.gov.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Not copyright.com, too. There's like a separate entity, so it has to be .gov.
Okay. All right. And then let's talk about music, because musicians are trying to get into the space. And with musicians, I mean, that's a whole other field where, you know, you have so many collaborators usually. And I know the music industry has traditionally just struggled in general with IP and all the different collaborators protecting their rights and distributing royalties. I would imagine that that's just like an administrative nightmare.
Right.
Yep. So what are some of the unique issues that musicians might face in this NFT space?
So it's a great question, because there are some nuances and challenges on the music side, because that is a well-established area of royalties and rights attached to certain performing rights organizations and music publishers. So let me I'll make a statement and then break it down just a little bit more. But the challenge on the music side, which is distinct from visual art or writing that doesn't involve the writing of music, is that copyright, or I would say music copyrights, have basically two separate copyrights that attach. One is in the composition. The composition is the music and the lyrics. And then there's a second copyright in the sound recording, which is the performance of that underlying composition. Somebody goes to the studio and records the song and the music and the lyrics. They are creating a performance of that, and that performance is fixed back in the day on wax. Not so much evidently on wax anymore, but let's just call it the album, right? The performance of 10 to 14 songs, and those songs are music and lyrics in most cases. So managing the composition rights, we're called music publishing, the writer's share of music publishing, the publisher's share, which is separate and distinct from selling that. It's like if when Dolly Parton writes, "I Will Always Love You," but Whitney blows the door off of it, right? And Dolly is sitting back like, "Please sing, God rest your soul, Whitney." That every time somebody plays Whitney's version of "I Will Always Love You," who's always paid?
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton, paid all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. So the distinction of that, you have to be careful, because remember earlier when we were talking about the rights within the bundle that is copyright, one of those is the right to public performance. And there are these public performance organizations that collect royalties. This was a really big deal as we moved from people buying units of CDs, right? The sales of CDs went down, licensing went up. A lot of artists aren't making a ton of money off of licensing, but we've switched the model. And that is going to apply in this space as well. When you think about a public performance, final point, those platforms may have some blanket public performance license, I'm not sure. Excuse me, but those are things that a music artist is going to have to think about. Now, if they're recording and using their own work, that's one thing. If someone's using someone else's music in theirs, in their own creativity, we think about fair use, but it's really dangerous. And most people who are in the music biz are very litigious, for sure. And they will work hard to take down. I've seen takedowns happen. We've already started to see that in the NFT space as well. That's a way that somebody can protect themselves by requesting a takedown of some potentially infringing work.
Yeah, I know Beyonce is pretty known for being on top of everything, from like use of her image to use of her voice and her music. So you are launching a copyright course for creatives on NFTs. Can you tell our audience about that?
Yes, well, I know that you have felt the frenetic pace in the NFT space, particularly in the Black NFT art space. And for all of the questions, you have posed some really important questions, and they're things that come up all the time. I was doing so many podcasts and interviews with reporters. It's like, let me just assemble all this information into one place and make it accessible for artists to figure this out. I was also super concerned about a lot of the misinformation, just plain old wrong information in clubhouses and on social media. It's like, no, if anybody starts, I'm not a lawyer, but leave that room immediately, like ASAPly. Yes. Don't mess with that room. Get out. And just it drives me crazy. And I can't jump on every stage and like save the day. And I'm going to start to do more formal things and create a club and participate in that way because I want to get the information out. And so I created both a free masterclass, which is about 60 minutes. I hit the overview. Not really a ton of opportunities for questions, but I take questions in advance and then just set the basics, right? Mm-hmm. But many people will want a deeper dive. And so I created NFT Law for creatives and collectors. Both the masterclass will be on April 10th at 3 p.m. You can go to advantageevans.com and sign up for that. The course is the deeper dive. I use the Thinkific platform. It's a self-paced, multi-lesson, multi-module course, but you can move through it relatively quickly. It's not meant for you to spend like 10 weeks. You have lifetime access, however long you take, but it's meant for you to get a solid foundation so that you can feel confident when you're going out to mint and to sell or to buy. So I certainly talk about what is intellectual property, the differences between the different types of intellectual property. A lot of people don't understand the difference between copyright and trademark and patent, right of publicity, right of privacy, things of that nature. Or what rights are created when an artist mints an NFTs, you asked. What rights are transferred to the marketplace. What rights are acquired by the collector. The difference between the token itself and the underlying art. And also spending some time on the persistence of a file. So from a collector's point of view, you buy something, but is it a plain old URL that could disappear overnight? Or is it something that is more persistent with IPFS and things of that nature? It's really important to understand where that digital property is housed or stored, I should say. What happens if someone infringes and how to go through the process of filing a notice for takedown, which is part of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, secondary market sales, and all of that.
The course right now, it's very, very comprehensive.
Yes, absolutely.
What about purchasing? I know you have you had some like option to save by pre-enrolling. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So I created a discount code. Right now, the course is in pre-enroll status, and the content will open, the course will open on April 16th, Friday, April 16th. So if you pre-enroll now, you'll get the $600 rate, but I'm going to give you a coupon code for even less than that. When the course opens, it will be $750. So now the regular registration rate is $600. If you use Nifty 50, you get half off right now. So Nifty 50, and you can get half off of that registration. And that will go through, I think they've coded it to end on the 17th. So, yeah, it ends technically.
Coupon code.
The coupon code. The course goes on and on and on. It will be persistent. The coupon code for, and one of the major benefits of enrolling early, besides obviously saving half, I'm taking everyone who pre-enrolls and setting up a series of AMAs so the course is self-guided, but I will set up a series of AMAs. You jump on, ask me anything, spend a few hours together, so 2 or 3 hours. And so anybody who pre-enrolls will automatically be invited into that VIP cohort, and then have a chance to meet with me specifically, get your questions answered, and make sure you're on the right path.
Awesome. Okay, so just a quick recap. Course is $750. Pre-enroll. If you pre-enroll, it's $600. You have to pre-enroll before April 16th. And if you use the coupon code Nifty50, you'll get an additional what percentage off?
Half off.
Half off.
Yep.
Okay. So
And it's spell out the word 50.
Okay, gotcha. And so would it be half off of the 600?
That's correct.
Okay, so 300.
3.
Gotcha. And then do you have a monthly payment option?
I do. Let me pull that up because I don't even have that in front. The short answer is yes. I want to be accurate on what it is, so that you will have that information. I think it's $49 a month, and so that's the other way to continue to make it reasonable, for sure. That if you just want to get in, get clear, and dip out, then you are welcome to do that as well. So let me pull this up so that I can let you know for sure. Testing out my... So the coupon code would also apply to this. The rate that's listed on the website right now is $99 per month, but use the Nifty 50 and it will reduce that by half as well. And that will apply for the life of your monthly membership. And you can cancel at any time.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for raising that.
Yeah. Super exciting. We are actually Black NFT Art. We're planning on signing up for the course, so super excited to do that. And awesome. We're gonna get this episode out before Friday, so we can let folks know about the pre-registration and the coupon and everything.
Excellent.
But thank you so much, Tonya, for taking the time to speak with me. I know you're a super busy lady. I'm sure everyone's asking you a million questions. We're gonna have to speak another time so I can learn more about your hourly rate, and so well,
I know people, so you're family now, so you're family now.
Yeah, we are starting to consult on projects, and some folks are coming to us wanting some help with some NFT projects, and it would be great to have a lawyer on deck that we can reach out to when we need. So offline we'll have that conversation. But it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. So much. I'm sure we could talk for a long time about this, and I'm sure as things progress in the NFT space, there's going to be the first big lawsuit, the first big scandal, these things are going to happen, and I look forward to getting your take on it when they do.
I want to be your legal eagle. I want to be the legal eagle, and you called. It's like let's get Tonya on the phone for this live breaking news. Let's do that. I want to be that for you.
Yes, I would love that. We're trying to.
Awesome.
One of our big visions with this podcast was just to be a source of news, because in the NFT space, media kind of travels really slowly. So it's kind of like if you're not on Clubhouse, hearing what's happening, it's kind of hard to know what's going on and what the recent things are that are happening.
Right.
So we're hoping to be able to bring that to folks through this podcast.
Excellent. Well, I wish you continued success. I love how you're moving in the world, and you're family now. So let's win.
Thank you. Same to you. All righty. Thank you, Tonya. Have a good evening.
Take care.